Okay. Hello, everyone. Today is not a podcast for Ryan or for my dad or for myself. This is going to be just a raw footage of Alan Beaulieu and Ryan Tansom, unbridled on a very important topic. There is a danger confronting the economy that we need to share and felt compelled to walk through the different thought processes of what's going on with you. So, without further ado, Dad, if you want to kick us off, because you're the one that emailed me and said, I'm grateful we don't have a recording for the growth playbook this week because of everything that was going on. And I said, well, sounds like
Here we
people need
are.
to, yeah, exactly. People need to know.
I think you're right. They do need to know, Kim, because I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say, Ryan, too. But I'm very, very concerned. I think this move to put the Federal Reserve Board, especially the FOMC, but through the Federal Reserve Board system, under political control is very dangerous, very, very dangerous to everyday people. Um, just so everybody knows, the Federal Reserve Board has three goals: promote sustainable growth, keep inflation low, and to keep employment up or unemployment low, depending on how you put it. And they have two very important tools for that, which is interest rates and the money supply. The Fed uses a very methodical, thoughtful, statistical approach for doing this. Do I always agree with them? No. But what numbs my brain, Kim, is that politicians, a politician who is whimsical, a politician who is driven by wanting their approval rating to go up or to prove something is very dangerous because it upsets that stability that the FOMC provides. I don't always agree, but I do appreciate what they do. And I'm not just talking about President Trump here. I don't want people to think I'm
Mhm.
piling on Donald Trump. Other presidents have exerted pressure, not like this. I mean, this is this is mind-boggling. Um, 14 other Fed chairs and treasury and secretary officials and stuff have said this is destabilizing to the economy if it happens. We're going to find a weaker economy, slower growth. We're going to find ourselves in a position that we don't want to be in with recession or stagflation, with millions of Americans wondering how they're going to afford food, medical care, and employers that are not going to be able to grow because of inflation. I mean, it's just while the president says that we are in a growth economy. As a matter of fact, he has said that the economy is booming and he still wants interest rates to go lower. And that only creates inflation if it's true, which means he either doesn't understand or he actually knows it's not true, but he's covering it up, or he's really just lost. I don't really know what it is. And that may sound harsh, but a booming economy, drastically lowering interest rates is somebody's idea of well, it's a dumb idea. It's as dumb as it comes. Okay. It just is. I'm gonna take a little Valium now. And
Uh,
Ryan,
that's
what do you have to
fantastic.
say?
Um, it's so interesting to me, Alan, because I know we have a time frame for this, and you've always said like, okay, where do I start after my responses? It's such a nuanced thing because I agree with everything you're saying, like, and I think about where I come at the challenge and what is the problem. So I try to usually like I think the best way to, Alan, is like because I truly am in the exploratory phase of like, how do I think about this, and like, how do I actually, where are my opinions? And when I think about when I started, the first principle is of I believe that the US is bankrupt. So when you have a company that's bankrupt, it's like a raccoon in the corner. And like everybody's trying to claw at different things. And I look at like all of the political instability. And the way I think about our country is you have like if you have a wealthy family and all the kids are leeches on the family estate, everybody's fine as long as there's money. And if there's no money, everyone fights. And I think that's where I see just the US, the political instability. And when I think about the challenge, I don't want any politician in control of my money. So I agree with like that's where parts of the stuff that I'm agreeing with. It's like okay, like I don't want Biden, I don't want Trump responsible for my money, which is why I'm a Bitcoiner and an Austrian economics. Like I want sound money that you can't print. But here we are, and there's a mathematical doom loop here that I see ourselves in, where the only way to get out of this is to inflate the money supply. And like when you say like you got the Fed has these mandates, understood, but they, on December, was it, I can't remember what date it was, the repo market is now controlling everything. Like their political or like the financial stability of the system is part of their deal. And if it's 80% of the economy is debt refinancing, treasuries as the bottom of that pyramid has to stay stable. And so maybe the way I'm kind of thinking was I don't want politicians in control of my money, regardless of the party. If they have control, I don't like the risk of property rights that I see as a way of means of like figuring out a way to get out of this debt doom loop, which I don't want that as a byproduct. Um, but then you go, okay, like how do the hell you get out of this when the Fed's already, it's 40 billion, is it 40 billion a week or a month now that it's not QE, and then like where the government spends their money with the fiscal dominance. So I don't know. So like I look at this and I go, yeah, I agree with you all on that. And like I don't think the Fed should be around. But here we are, it's 120 years around, after Woodrow Wilson approved that while everybody's on vacation. So we're here. I don't want instability and I don't want someone covering my money, controlling my money, but I don't know. I don't know. That's my like as I'm thinking through it, like I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate your Austrian roots. I'm Austrian leaning, but I think as far as this whole the market forces will decide interest rates and and all the rest of that, I think that ship has sailed. I think that
Agreed. And that because
you just
we're not in that timeline of the simulation, right? It's
right.
different.
So let it go, Ryan. Just breathe deeply and let it go. Just
But then when you go, okay, well, there is a mathematical debt doom loop here where we have to keep printing money, which is the repo market that is going to continue to inflate. Otherwise, everything's redlining.
this thing does reset all on its own. So if you want, you asked a question in your talk about how does this thing correct itself? It corrects itself in the depression, and when bond markets around the world are in trouble, the world rejects the U.S. financial position, and we find ourselves where we have to be fiscally responsible. And what's going to enable that all to work is the death of the baby boomers, like we've talked about before. So when I die, you two are good. I mean, well, three of me have to die for every two of you, but that'll work. And we got enough people that can die. So with the pressure of the depression and the death of the baby boomers, we're going to find that there is that ability to reset. And maybe then some Austrian-like thinking can come about, some fiscal responsibility.
I track you on that, and I honestly, that's my hope. Honest, other than your death, Alan, because then our beautiful times together would not be able to continue. But maybe I think where I struggle with like the mathematics of finance and economics as a, like when people are rational automatons, okay, what world is that? Like there's people that do random stupid shit, predictably irrational is like the name of a book, and behavioral economics is a thing. So I just don't, when I look at the recorded history that I've gone through, every single time a global currency has gotten to this point where they've inflated themselves, the political discourse is so dysfunctional that like if it was just this perfect melting away and then you guys drop off in over 10 years, that's fine. But like we have like states now that are involved in like activism and property rights and like how well, are the younger people okay, or the people that are not doing well okay enough watching all of this go on for the next 2028 election and 2032 election, where all of a sudden people are trying to blame someone because they don't understand what you and I are talking about. They're blaming the different nationalities, the different genders, the different ages, and they're trying to find the boogeyman to argue with, and then vote someone else in that is going to pander to whatever side that they want. And that's what scares me is like, oh my God, like it's either fascism or communism, and I don't like either option.
Wow. All right. Let me take out from what you said. One, go to my funeral, and what I want you to do is say, Alan predicted this. This was going to happen. So
he predicted he was going to die. Like look at that, 100% accuracy on forecasting on that one.
that's right. You got the win. All right. So that'll be your job. Okay, Ryan?
All right, Kim, you got to make sure I get the invite.
Noted.
Noted.
But I'm gonna you you range far and wide, and you bring up some really deep stuff. And if we have a half hour sometime, I'd love to go through some of that with you. But I want to bring it back today to the political pressure on the Fed as opposed to a lot of the things that you talked about.
Hmm.
And what I want to just raise today was that this is not healthy for the U.S. economy or for the U.S. people to have this political pressure. I don't care if it's Democrat or Republicans. Ben
Hmm.
Bernanke and Greenspan and Janet Yellen and all those others, they served under Democrats and Republicans. I mean, this is not one party's fault. If any party decides to exert that influence, um,
Yep.
I think it's a
Can you
mistake.
explain
Oh, I
why
really need
to
to,
me and the listeners why that political pressure makes things unstable? Because I do agree with you, and I don't think I've got a way of articulating it like you would.
because they have a tendency to do what is politically expedient as opposed to what is best for the longer view. It's like the election cycle. It's a 2 year election cycle. Nobody in
Mhm.
Washington thinks beyond 2 years. If you're the Fed, you have to think about the slower. This takes time. We can't just rush into this because it builds momentum. And politicians don't ever think that way anymore. I mean, maybe they used to, but they don't anymore. And there's no methodical approach to politics. It's just all my hair's on fire, and
Hmm.
off they
Hmm.
go. And that's the danger.
Hmm.
I don't think they can. Well, I'm going to say it. I don't think they can be trusted uh,
Period. You can just
with
stop.
that powerful. No, with that powerful a tool. And
Okay.
to your point, there shouldn't be a Fed. What I've told audiences over the years is that's fine. I understand the Austrian point of view, and I understand market forces, and they're a beautiful thing. But where we are in history, if it's not the Federal Reserve Board or central banks, but our central bank's called Federal Reserve Board, then it would go back to Congress. And I would say, do you really trust Congress to get this right?
Yeah. Well, and that's where it is like it is such a it really breaks my brain, Alan, because like there's the whole it's a false choice that it feels like, but then it's like, okay, but I am also a practical person going, okay, we are here. And I think when one of our previous conversations is like, yes, but we're here and we don't want to flip the whole currency system globally because we would have anarchy everywhere. And that's not good. And so let me see if I can regurgitate part of what you said back is because this is what I do believe too, is if the global financial system is an inverted pyramid of leverage, the bottom is US treasuries. If that is destabilized, the whole thing is at risk for pricing, for like, and then like everything becomes shaky from the bottom up. And regardless of what political party exerting pressure on the Fed makes that whole inverted pyramid of money destabilized, which is kind of back to the whole anarchy. Like, yeah, we might not like this, but like we still don't want the whole thing to break at once. Is that a
Agreed.
fair way to put it?
Agreed. And I like how you used the word regurgitated because what went through my brain is great. I just made him want to throw up. But
We're like a bird. You throw up
Like
in
a
my
little
mouth, and that's now
birdie.
food. Well, it's food. It's nourishment, Alan.
so that's my warning to people that are want to know is this good, bad, or is that's a moral value. This is dangerous. This is just economically dangerous territory. And if you can talk to your congressmen, your senators, or to whomever you want to talk to, say the Fed must remain independent. And while there are lots of virtues to the market theory and to the Austrian way of thinking, the reality of the moment is they must remain independent and be able to say to Washington, buzz off.
What are the ramifications if the Trump administration does hijack the Board of Governors and some of the mandates? Like, how do they do? Like, what is the process of like and what are the implications of that? And I'm very curious, Alan. Like, when all of a sudden there's another party, and so let's say you got blue and red here that have opposing views of how to handle money and spread it around. So anybody listening in, regardless of their political affiliation, what would be the ramifications if this actually goes down?
I,
That's
I think
exactly the question I have. Good job. That's exactly where my brain went. All right, now we know it's dangerous. What does that mean?
a, a, an a world that becomes less dependable. Right now, you can count on mortgage rates not moving erratically. And so the building industry needs that. The automobile industry needs that. The banking
Hmm.
industry needs that. And credit card industry and all the rest. You need to know it's not erratic. You have to know that there's money available. And if there's a tightening in the money supply, it's not erratic and it's not by leaps and bounds. It's a slow
Hmm.
tightening so that people can adjust to it. So there's less borrowing that can go on. But when things happen quickly, it's like, oh my gosh, the world's falling apart. And if all of a sudden there's this flood of cash and there's all this crazy buying going on, and that creates inflation. And for the moment, it seems like great consumerism. Factories can't keep up. And that's where the problem is, because as they can't keep up, prices go up. And I mean, it just creates anarchy in people's lives. And how do your clients, Ryan, plan in that kind of environment? And Kim, how do
Well, I
you
mean,
get
even
a
it's just on
market?
even on the personal level, Alan. Like I'm looking at like building an outbuilding in my backyard, and like I'm like, I don't know, a rate's gonna go down 3 times this year, but if they go down, does the 10-year go up or down? I mean, like it's impossible to plan to your point, like equipment
Yeah,
financing or doing an acquisition or like
exactly.
it's impossible. Yeah.
That's right. And by the way, build a building. Don't worry about interest rates.
It's I'm not concerned about the interest rates. I'm concerned about my budget and my desire of like what I actually want and how much it actually costs. It's less about the interest rates.
But
Um,
but you have stated it well. With the uncertainty comes the inaction. And Kim, you and I have talked about this in prior podcasts and in writings. Uncertainty is the enemy of the economy. And this just introduces another layer of uncertainty. Uncertainty is the enemy of business planning. And as retirement planning, the whole thing is like, how do I know what's going on? And how do I plan for that? And it may sound like I'm exaggerating the case, but if you get political parties that are changing their mind every 2 years, then you get this whipsaw action. And in the meantime, in the 2 years, you can create a lot of inflation, or you can create such an austere environment that things come crashing down because I don't think a
that's
lot of the people in charge that would be making those types of decisions understand the ramifications of those decisions and that it takes time to weigh things out. Um,
and amen. And I want more certainty, even if it's not fantastic over the next 5 to 10 years, given your forecast. And it's the slow boil, but it's better than the frog that jumps into the boiling water, right? Like at least you get warm along the way, and you can then you get used to it. But the on the way I think about it, I mean, this maybe gets into the mechanics too much and too geeky, and you both can stop me. But like the way I think about even so the Fed interest rates is doing less now than it ever has because it's not as effective because the government spending and where they spend their money becomes that. So that's as I've learned, fiscal dominance versus what's the Fed dominance?
Monetary policy.
Monetary policy. So where the government spends the money and the deficit spending is becoming, my wife was asking me like, what companies are succeeding? Like whoever's got the closest money, like wherever they're at in the money spigot, like is the people that are winning. And so fiscal dominance. And so the repo market has become this mechanism of stability where, like, I mean, they're refinancing $550 billion a week at new higher level interest rates. It's like the snake eating its tail. It's insane. And so the repo markets is like on the bottom of that pyramid is like we have to have those treasury markets and the repo markets are at like if the whole bottom of the pyramid they're like standing on the repo markets is what I've like gathered and like the yen carry and all these hedge funds and all this leverage it's like we can't screw things up so we have to print 40 billion a month to keep that stable to keep the liquidity in the banks so like the way my brain and kind of like the schizo of me is I don't like that because it's inflation of the money and the basement of the dollar. What's the alternative? What you're saying. And I don't want that more. So then it's like, okay, well, I can plan around a slow 7 to 8% debasement of the dollar. I can plan as long as then the 10-year treasury and borrowing costs are stable. I can plan around that, even though it's a reality I don't like. Versus if the repo market's not there, or if the Fed is, hijacked by a politician, that makes everything unstable and completely impossible to plan around. Do you think that those two things are correlated from the mechanism of planning? Or how do you think I'm thinking about that?
I think you're fine in you're thinking about that. And as far as your repo market and your when you do this, which
The
by the way, I think I like
inverted
what you
pyramid. I'm
do.
thinking about this. It's the opposite of a pyramid.
It's the debasement of the dollar is a phrase that I wanted to go back to. political things, changes in the world, all of a sudden instability in the world can push people to the dollar, which stabilizes the dollar and puts up its value. So while I understand
Money
what you're
supply
saying.
growth, I guess, is my point. Like money supply growth, the inflation might be more on the outer edges of the, third world economies that we export our inflation, but like there's the increase of the US fiat money growth through like the bottom of that is like the spigot and the repo market. It's kind of the way they're doing it right now, is how I've gathered.
But so far, the world's fine with it. I mean, we've seen some devaluation in the dollar this year, but I wouldn't make this year the longer term trend at this point, because things can change to disrupt that. And I think the process that you're talking about, though, with the longer term debasement of the dollar feeds and inflation that goes with it, feeds right into the long term forecast that Brian and I developed in 2011 or 12 before we wrote the
Mhm.
book. So it all feeds in really well. So I thank the world for participating in making our book so accurate. That's just really thoughtful of them.
I love it. And back to the purpose of all of us being on here, I'm looking at the clock because I think Kim, you're the one with the hard cutoff. Is it's the it's the instability and the whipsaw of interest rates and who controls the money, and like all of that scares me, and for all the reasons that you mentioned. And honestly, I haven't been able to figure out how to quantify the level of concern I should have of like, I don't want politicians controlling money. Like just in general, I don't want them surveilling money. I don't want them determining who gets money and who doesn't get money. Like that's even a higher level of concern, a heightened level of concern for me. Like because like regardless of the politician, I don't want them to have any say of like where and how people access money. I don't know. It does that like does the current situation have an impact on their oversight of money in your perspective?
No, I think it makes it more difficult for them to accomplish their tasks. They just don't realize it. You made me think of though. Sometime it'd be fun to have a discussion about tax policy, flat tax versus consumption tax, and that sort of thing. That would be a fun discussion because there are answers to the things you just mentioned by using an entirely different tax policy, which is
Mm.
used in other parts of the world and could be used very effectively here. Flat tax and the 1%.
Not unrealized capital gains tax where you have to rely on the politicians for valuations. That would be fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. I mean, so there are answers to some of these problems, but it comes with a fairly dramatic change from what we have gotten used to, because we think what we are doing is the only way, but it's not the only way.
Mhm.
And there can be much more stable ways that would be beneficial to all parts of the economy, whether you're the lower quartile, and it's this what I was just talking about, it's not aimed to benefiting the higher quartile, it's benefiting at aiming
The
uh,
whole.
the whole. And it's a lot less political. You just stop. Again, the Congress said, shut up about the loopholes. It's 15%. It's a
Yeah.
postcard return. Just don't
Yeah.
argue about it.
Yeah. It's Alan, what would be interesting, and Kim, maybe this is piggybacking off of Alan's idea about furthering discussion. What I have found helpful is like as I've understand the whole of like the economy, the way I think about it is a business. And I think we could help people contextualize all of the noise. And the way that I like to think about it is when I look at a business, you have the income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow statement. And the company either makes cash or it doesn't. It is a binary answer. Yes, no. And so everything in the operations is a part of that. How sales did, how service did, how SG&A did, and the capital structure. So like everything has a part of it. But when I think about a bankrupt company and who's at that board or the CEO, they're the ones that's supposed to look at the out for the whole, and politicians just don't do that. So like there is no one human being or organization looking out for the whole of the company here, which is, and I think about when you have a bankrupt company and you had to, if you were to sit everybody down and be like, who wants to cut their department? How's that going to go? Like it's like a group discussion. IT is probably not going to be on board, like so every department and every facet of that company is going to be like that cornered raccoon that wants their pie, part of the pie, and there's no one to say, "Hey, the cash has to be positive and we have to shave it off across all these places for the whole thing to survive." And I think that's what we could maybe, because tax is a part of that and the revenue part, you have all these different components that help see the whole. And I don't think a lot of people have that context.
You just described a major part of the 1 cent solution. So I'll send you the title and the author of the book. I'll have to look it up because I don't know off the top of my head. And then I think you're going to see a light bulb go on, and you're going to go, "Wow, there is a path." And there were at one point 66 congressmen and women who were in favor of that legislation, which is not nearly enough, but does show that there were some people in Washington who understood there was a path out of this.
Hmm. What's it called?
The 1 cent solution.
1 cent. Okay, I got that.
I think the congressman's name is from Georgia, Republican, I believe, George Linder is the author.
Love it. Kim, are you over on your time?
Oh,
Okay.
well, I'm good. Engaging conversation. I did have a question though. So, Dad, when you were talking back to the instability, the unpredictability, the potential for greater swings in decisions than we see right now. So, just the lack of stability and then the impact that that would have on the supply chain, consumer, so on and so forth. Does it have a great enough impact to have some form of an impact on what we've always looked at in the business cycles? Like we say, everything goes in cycles, and you can use rates of change, and there's a predictability, and there's like a
Mm.
X amount of year cycle and everything else that we have been able to use in helping to determine a possible forward view. Does this have a significant enough disruption to hinder some of that?
I think what it has the potential to do is to exacerbate the swings and as opposed to anything else. More what it has the potential to do is make it difficult on the micro instead of the macro level for the family, for the individuals, as opposed to the larger economic cycles that have occurred. Ryan, one of the things that the school of thought, the Austrian school of thought, says is business cycles really started when the Fed started in 1913. If they really mean that, if I read that correctly, that's patently not true. We actually have proof that it goes back centuries. So the price cycles as well as industrial cycles, and I'm not going to get into more because it's proprietary. But it's not hard for people to see that cycles have occurred before that.
Yeah,
Which
if you read the book, The Fourth Turning.
Oh, part of it, part of
Yeah.
it. I heard Neil Howe talk about it, and I found that much more enjoyable than reading the book.
Me too. I got like an hour into the book and I was like, because I listened to it, I was like, are we just saying this? Is this on like loop? Like we're in cycles, just saying the same thing over and over again. I get it. No, it's interesting, and I think that what my favorite money book that I read was the History of Money and Banking in the United States through the colonial era to now by Rothbard, because it was 450 years of politicians fighting over who inflates the money, and then like the gold versus the silver pricing and all that kind of stuff. So like I've learned the most out of that book as far as like kind of a thought process because it's not clean and simple. That's what I
No,
gathered.
no. And you know what? That proves the point about the business cycle, which is wonderful. And the other thought that came to my mind is, Ryan, you really got to get a life.
I'm pretty sure I sent that book to Kim because I was in Mexico and I sent her a picture of a book. I'm like, this is what I'm doing on vacation. She goes, you remind me of my dad. And I was like, yay, I've made it in my life.
Oh, well.
Question
So
though, Dad, that I have for you really quick. Like when you say greater swings, what pops into my head is again going back to predictability. Because if we were working with companies that have big swings, it's much harder, obviously, to predict. And so is my logic going in the right or the wrong way with my thinking that, again, kind of like the ocean or the storm, if you will, bigger companies may be able to handle it better than the smaller companies. So I'm just thinking like of the small to medium sized businesses in the US. If all of a sudden these swings become that much greater, what kind of impact may that have on like the leadership team of these small to medium sized businesses? And then the predictability of how do they plan for the next 1 to 5 years with any bit of confidence with that kind of swing happening around them?
That's a tricky question, and
Thanks.
you're welcome. That could take a little bit. So give me a moment here. A smaller company can be much more agile and therefore adjust to the changes quicker.
Yep.
While a big
Agree
company
there.
can become monolithic, so stuck in their ways that they can see their bow swamped with water, to use your metaphor, and be unable to respond in time, their course, so that they're facing into the wave, into the wind, as opposed to saying, I won't, it's fine. Everything's fine.
Hmm.
So I think it depends on the company and the leadership, Kim. If you have a small company with a leader who thinks that there's no need to change, you're dead. If you have this big company that's led by a fairly agile leadership team, you can overcome. So I'm not going to give it a size preference. I'm going to give it a leadership preference.
No, I
Kim,
like
I
that.
think Kim, how I would answer that based on like the work that you and I are doing with the playbooks is if someone has a clear 5-year plan, like with an original, like, hey, here's what I would like to do for revenue, for margins, for normalized EBITDA and cash flow evaluation, and they've got a financial model that connects where they are to that point. It's a 3 statement model so they can see their cash flow, actual cash flow, working capital. Then we can look at the revenue and the margins. And I kind of think about that as the ship. So like I think about back to like when, my experience of like those volatile waves are like the whole world shut down, boom. And there was like everyone 5 trillion and boom. And it was just like wham, wham, like, the floor, the ceiling. And people way overbuilt their infrastructure. And then all of a sudden 2022 and 3 hit and they didn't have any way to right size that. Or like, so it was just managing that revenue and that margins and that cash in proportion to the demand. And then to Alan, I think your point of like being nimble, whether it's big or small, like doing the hard shit and quit denying the fact that you're overstaffed now that the pipeline drew up. Like I mean, I watched there was this HVAC company I used to work with that was like five. It was trailing 12 months of normalized EBITDA went from like 4 to 4.5 to 6.7 and then back down to 4.8. And everybody's like, oh, we're doing so bad. I'm like, you're literally still up 15%. If you would have kept that whole thing and that see where the free money came in, and it was like this big, huge bump, but like they were looking in the rearview mirror versus just acknowledging what was going on.
Yeah, I saw that happen a lot with companies too. They felt that they were doing so poorly or things were way off, and then when you just normalize it, folks, you feel a lot better about life and understand
Yeah.
that was not
Yeah, but
life.
Alan, now I've got 50 more people on staff and they have nothing to do.
That's
Fire
right.
them. Go
Time to
back to
talk
normal.
HR.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, truck driving is a good option, but yeah, that's another discussion.
A follow-up question that I have to all of this then. So to summarize, still manageable. Don't run and hide in a cave somewhere. Just be more agile, be more alert, and more communicative, I would think, with your leadership team, and innovative and all of that. What about folks that are on the fence about selling before the depression? I mean, if this goes through and becomes a thing, and people are already bought into the 2030s economic depression and are asking themselves, do I wait until 2028, 2029? Like maybe they've already started things in the works and they're like, but maybe I'll just delay that a little bit to see how much more runway I can get out of this. Like, does this impact or should it impact their thinking somehow if they're considering selling the business?
What we've discussed today, in my opinion, does not change the timeline of when if you're going to do it for purely financial reasons at 28, 29. Now, you both know there are lots of other reasons why people sell their businesses, but if you just want to do a purely financial projection, that'd still be where I would choose. And then make sure you sell it to somebody you don't like because it's going to go bad real quickly.
Perfect. So not to your child or
That's right.
I do think at some point we should unpack that because I find there could be a very, very interesting opportunity to use privately held cash flowing companies to manage this storm as far as like maintaining your equity and like going through and growing equity, growing cash flow as other people in your industry are either too leveraged, too, et cetera, because otherwise you're going to have to find there's a whole strategy on the asset protection side that becomes like, I don't know. I don't know which one's more work depending on your age and depending on your income needs.
I'm with you on that, Ryan. It's just I was thinking what I have in mind with that is people who want to sell. I'm all in favor of hold and use it to your advantage and in the
Got it.
long
Yeah, yeah,
haul, the evergreen and all the rest of that. But
yeah,
if you of the mindset, I'm going to sell this thing, when's the best time?
yeah.
Uh,
I like that. Good clarification.
Thank you for allowing me to regurgitate the.
I'm just
And on that note,
nourishment. It's just my nourishment.
anything else that unbridled Tansom or Beaulieu would like to add to this raw footage that we'll just be throwing out there on social media so that way people can know that this is a true danger to our economy? I'm just summarizing things in my mind. Dad, you had given some advice, like speak to your congressman or woman, and like, are there other pieces of advice that you would give? Just how do you want to, what are your closing thoughts, both of you, and how you want to wrap this up?
Don't panic because of this, but take that nimble discussion we had to make sure that that's in your mind, that what you think might be stable may not be. So just have the plans in place in case. That way you're not going to be surprised, unduly surprised in a bad place.
Pay attention and build a good business so you can do whatever you want.
I like it.
See, Alan, I am capable of being short-winded.
I was wait,
He was, I think you made him speechless, Ryan. He didn't know what
Wait a second. Did he go on mute for a second?
it
Wait, there's no, that was it? There was one sentence there?
was. That was
beautiful too.
hilarious.
Little tear in that.
Oh, that was funny.
Uh,
Well, thanks
awesome.
for having the event here, Kim. As you know, because of the email, this really bothers me because of the dangers, and it's just nice to send up a flare and go, pay attention, people. This can be dangerous.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you reached out. So thank you. I'm gonna just go ahead and shut the recording.